So you've probably heard this a lot lately. The US Surgeon General is talking about a loneliness epidemic. And it's a weird thing, right? We're all connected online, but so many of us feel completely alone. But this isn't about that. This is about a totally different kind of story. It's not about becoming lonely when people leave. It's about becoming peaceful when you choose to let them go.
Yeah, the numbers are pretty staggering. Nearly 1 in 4 adults say they feel isolated, and that points to a real need for connection. But what if the problem isn't a lack of people? What if the real problem is the noise, the constant draining connections? What if peace isn't about adding more people to your life, but about being really, really selective about who gets your energy? I bet you know this exact moment. You see their name light up your phone, and you just pause. Instead of that automatic reflex to answer, you just stop. You can feel the weight of all those past conversations, and this quiet little voice inside you just says, "Not today, not anymore." And in that silence that comes next, it isn't loneliness you feel. It's relief. Now, this is the point where a lot of people will tell you that cutting someone off is just unhealthy, that it's avoidance. But what if that's not the whole picture? What if that feeling of relief was actually a signal? By the end of this, you might just realize you weren't pushing people away. You were finally protecting something absolutely essential.
Think about it. For a long time, you were the one, weren't you? The person who always answered that 2 a.m. crisis call. The one who'd walk on eggshells just to keep the peace. You were like an emotional sponge, just soaking up everyone else's drama and chaos. People knew they could call you when their world was falling apart, and you'd always pick up.
But here's the catch. You'd give them advice, and they just ignore it. You'd listen to the same problems, the same mistakes, over and over and over. Until that one day, you saw the name, you let it ring, and you kind of braced yourself for the fallout. But nothing happened. The world didn't fall apart. In fact, everything just got quiet. That moment, that decision not to answer, that wasn't weakness, and it sure wasn't a failure. That was your brain doing exactly what it's built to do. It was flipping a switch, a protective one. Let's get into the science of what was actually going on inside your nervous system.
Okay, so there's this really fascinating idea from Dr. Stephen Porges called Polyvagal theory. The simple version is that it's kind of like a roadmap for our nervous system. It shows how we automatically shift into different modes depending on whether our brain senses safety or a threat.
So think of it like this. You have 2 key modes. When you feel safe and good around people, you're in social engagement mode. You're open, you're talkative, you want to connect. But when you're dealing with constant emotional drain, your brain flips you into the dorsal vagal state. It's basically a protective shutdown, a strategic retreat to save your own energy. And this is the part that everyone needs to understand. That shutdown isn't you being cold. It's not you being heartless. It is a biological survival strategy. Your body is literally closing the door to conserve energy and protect you from getting completely depleted. It is self-preservation, and it's wired right into us. You know, for a lot of us, this whole pattern starts way back. There's a concept called emotional cutoff, and it often comes from growing up in a home where the emotional weather could change in an instant. You learn a really powerful lesson when you're young. Getting close to people can be expensive, emotionally expensive. So your mind adapts. You learn that sometimes the safest place to be is by yourself. Okay, but that brings up a really important question. How do you protect yourself without just cutting yourself off from everyone? Because there is a huge difference between the two. And honestly, it's a distinction that most people get completely wrong. Let's be really clear about this. We need connection. We are wired for it. The CDC says that long-term social isolation can increase your risk of heart disease by 29%. So yeah, this is serious stuff. And it can increase your risk of a stroke by 32%. The data doesn't lie. Being truly isolated is dangerous. But, and this is the part we always seem to miss, being surrounded by the wrong people, by constant chaos, can be just as bad for your health.
So how do you know which one you're doing? Well, it all comes down to walls versus boundaries. See, walls are built from fear. They block everyone out, no exceptions. It's just a reaction. But boundaries are different. They're built from self-awareness. They're selective. They are a conscious choice to protect your energy from what you know will drain it. Here is the simplest test in the world. If you put some distance between you and someone else, and what you felt was a deep, profound sense of relief, that's your answer.
If peace washed over you, that wasn't you avoiding a problem, that was you protecting yourself. That was your nervous system saying, yes, good job, that was the right move. And you probably made that call because you've gotten really, really good at spotting patterns. Neuroscience actually backs this up. It shows that going through emotional stress early in life can basically supercharge the threat detection parts of your brain. You're not paranoid. Your brain just processes social cues on a much deeper level than most people's. Your intuition is like an early warning system built from years of experience.
And all of this leads us to a totally new way of looking at what you're going through. It's time we ditch the labels society loves to use and actually define what's really going on.
Society has all sorts of words for people who step back from drama, right? You're withdrawn, you're antisocial, distant. But all those labels assume something is wrong, that something is missing. They completely miss the point.
The word you're probably looking for isn't loneliness, it's solitude. And that difference is everything. See, loneliness is the absence of the connection you wish you had. But solitude? Solitude is the presence of the peace you chose. You're not sitting there wishing your phone would ring. You're sitting in the quiet, finally able to hear yourself think again.
Which brings us to the most important thing to take away from all of this. Your decision to curate your life, to choose peace, that is not a flaw. It's a form of wisdom. It's a strength you've earned.
Look, some people will tell you you're just running away from your problems or from relationships, but you know better. You're not running from anything. You are running toward something. You're running toward peace, toward clarity, toward the version of you that just can't breathe in the middle of constant chaos. That's not isolation. That's building a sanctuary.
So if you're listening to this and you've ever wondered if something is wrong with you, let me just say this. There is nothing wrong with you. You are not cold, you are not heartless, you are someone who learned, probably the hard way, that your peace and your energy are precious. And you didn't become bitter, you became selective. Harvard did this incredible study on happiness that lasted for 75 years. And you know what they found? A happy life isn't about the quantity of your friends or relationships. It all comes down to the quality. If your circle is small, but it's full of people who genuinely support you, you're not failing at life, you're winning.
If any of this felt like something you needed to hear today, feel free to leave a comment. I do read them. And just remember this, protecting your peace isn't selfish. It's one of the wisest things you can ever do.